Hello.
Yesterday I went to Target because I was out of canned tomatoes and I like to make chili, so they're a very important ingredient. And I know that I have been struggling to find canned food lately, but I thought, well, give it a shot. So I went to Target, went to the canned vegetable aisle, and no tomatoes. It was actually so picked over. There were a few canned artichokes left, and there was some sauerkraut, but it was basically just a few things left on the shelf. And I thought, it sucks to be me. And this couple walked by at the end of the aisle, and I heard the guy say Democrats, with them in his voice. And so that's not typical to hear that kind of hostility, open hostility out in public. Then I made a happy discovery that apparently at Target they are particular about the whole, tomatoes aren't actually a vegetable, they're a fruit. And so tomatoes have their own section at Target, and I'm not sure if that's even why. I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt, because they say that knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in the fruit salad, and philosophy is turning it into a Bloody Mary. Anyway, so I was happy to discover that there was a different aisle, and there were plenty of canned tomatoes. There was still a limit on the number that I could purchase, but I loaded up on canned tomatoes, and I felt like I won the lottery. What country do I live in that I feel like I won the lotto because there were canned tomatoes at the grocery store? It's not an exotic ingredient, but there was no toilet paper, of course, but there were some paper towels. There were a few paper towels left, so that's a silver lining. So I went to check out and was told to go to aisle 9. I go to aisle 9 and I'm standing behind the start of the belt. So not even where, at the start of the conveyor belt, I'm standing behind that with my cart. And the woman at the cashier, she said, could you step back, please? And I was like, okay, I think I will step way back. So I picked another line and I found a nice gal who was working as a cashier, not on a power trip, and we had a little chit chat about the strange times that we are living in. It's getting more openly hostile, and it doesn't surprise me considering that we have now had a record 16.8 million people apply for jobless benefits. In the last 3 weeks, we've had more than 1 in 10 Americans have lost their jobs, and 16.8 million have applied for jobless benefits, which is apparently the highest number since 1948. So not at the Great Depression yet, but it's only been a few weeks. One of my good friends, her sister's a nurse, and because they have so few patients, because they have a lack of work right now, she is being asked to take a week off every month, either use her PTO, or unpaid because there isn't enough work for them. And a friend of mine who's a doctor is also not getting enough work, and that's because of the forced not being able to do elective surgeries. So because he's not allowed to do elective surgeries, he doesn't have a lot of work because he's an orthopedic surgeon. So Tim Walz is the governor of Minnesota. That's where I live. And he is saying that he wants to extend this lockdown through May 4th, which he says is based on models that he refuses to show us. And I feel like if you're asking us to go into a Great Depression over your models, we really need to see your model. We need to cough it up. Restaurants continue to not be able to operate. We continue to remain in quarantine, but this is like a martial law quarantine because you can get arrested. I guess it's apparently jail time or a $1,000 fine if you're found to be violating the orders, which to me sounds like martial law. I haven't seen the tanks rolling down the street yet, but if you're able to be jailed, I don't know what else to call that. If this has only been 3 weeks, I don't know what May 4th is going to look like if we just keep going in this direction. It looks like we can't afford it. I mean, we're a country that often lives paycheck to paycheck, so we weren't exactly prepared for this. We're already looking at a dire situation economically, and we haven't even felt the full brunt of it yet. The people who are demanding that we stay locked down at all costs, I've heard some people, but they're worried, they're like, well, what is this worth? Is this worth people dying? And to that, I would say, well, so one person had asked, what do we do about people who are in nursing homes? Well, I would imagine you take the same precautions that you're taking right now. I mean, if you're wearing a mask right now, you would still wear a mask in a nursing home if you're around a vulnerable population. I was in a group recently, and a friend of mine said that someone she knew had gotten coronavirus. I'm like, so what happened? And she said, well, she got coronavirus. And I said, and I'm like, right, but what happened? And she said, well, she had some respiratory symptoms, and she had a cough, and she was kind of fatigued, and but basically, like, nothing more than happens when you have a cold. Stay home is not the only opinion, and if you personally want to stay home, see, and this is what I feel like isn't emphasized enough, is that it's not about me. If I want to stay home, I'm afraid of coronavirus, I could. Nobody would force me. This is why, so I could see how compulsive schooling, that's an option to allow, an exemption for children who are afraid for whatever reason. Maybe they have some vulnerability. They want to be removed from the school system for a time being. Totally understandable, anything that's compulsive like that. But for people to force me not to leave my home when I'm neither in contact with anyone who is a vulnerable population or receiving anyone who is into my home, why in the world would you force me by law to do that? Force me at gunpoint to remain in my home. I question whether anybody who's insisting on this has ever had to miss a meal, because if you haven't had to live with hunger or homelessness, you may have a different opinion on this. There's always the option that if you want to socially isolate yourself, you should have the freedom to do that. Nobody's telling you that you can't. And if you are an elder care worker, then I would assume you would take precautions, and you probably are already. But that doesn't require martial law. It's concerning times that we live in, and I think it's a bad choice. It's a very poor choice to demand that we stay in lockdown until May 4th. I would recommend that we put a stop to it, that we reverse this policy today. If it were up to me, we would end it today. Thanks for listening.